bahay?
Siguro, baka
So nice. So nice. Você nem viu nada, você só tá real. Tá tipo assim. Oi. Like XG has like.
O Lé falou que é pra lá. Que aqui é só dar a volta. Mas ele falou que dá pra
We can bring back the USA.
Yes.
Конечно, я сделал. Я когда-то...
If I sit on my bike, I'll fall.
But I don't mind like. Yeah, but some people do. So they won't only use.
Nanti di bos kayak banget terus.
English goal to our
They all kind of have their seats. just for checking your ball. I'm just doing cookies.
ちょうど今産休に入った先生がいて。
We are itchy.
We and
So much stuff.
Observa. Ja.
なんかあったら手取ること多いけど、でもそんなにはないですね。
Azul dam na. Min, pisa. Baka
Whatever the massage therapy.
Y yo como contaré lo que yo vi, lo que outside, right?
And then I can put it further back.
Dad, that's a massage right now. Likewise.
Ede Maria.
Oh, yeah, well, TV's going on. Where are you?
And it's also vanilla, right?
That was awesome.
And then the guy who's been Oh my god. It's right on me up here.
Yeah, and I took off a couple of days and then. You also get.
对你没有住在那儿，你在温哥华，因为你住在那儿还是比较好。
This is forever.
알아, 오늘.
We had them in bought. I love the
certain way.
Way from me.
She doesn't have to travel now.
So, we have the power to back up.
Or you can go. David's interesting.
Chilling right here in Candy Place.
We're checking in.
try to work it out. You know,
I
like,
love academia.
yeah.
I love academia so much. This is not standardized.
How's everything okay for you?
这也行。
Yeah.